Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Hampstead School Board meeting for Tuesday, November 12th, 2019. Melissa, will you please call the roll?
Yes. Jason Giard?
Here.
Caitlin Parnell?
Here.
David Smith?
Here.
Jim Sweeney? Karen Yusenka?
Here.
Pinkerton Academy Student Liaison, Emma Johnston?
Here.
Thank you. And also seated at the board table is Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Earl Metzler.
If you could stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. In your packet, you have several sets of notes. Meeting minutes. We have our budget work session from October 22nd. We have our regular meeting from October 22nd, the non-public session from October 22nd, and then our additional budget work session from November 5th. Please take a minute to review, and then I'll be looking for a motion to approve.
Workshop, a regular, a non-public, and the November 5th budget workshop.
Second.
All in favor?
Thank you.
Next is public comments. Melissa, do we have any?
There are none tonight.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next we have administrative reports. Looks like we have Dr. Cheney today. Welcome.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. Mr. Collins sends his regrets. But first, we wanted to update you on our current levels of enrollment. When we began the school year, we started with about 470 students. We're now up to 483. We've had quite a large fall enrollment. Our numbers are pretty accurate, but we've had one new preschooler enroll this week and a new first grader as well. So that is a change since we sent this original report over. We'd like to take a minute to thank our staff for their hard work with the mosquito spray this year. The colder weather has finally arrived and we've been able to put the off away, but they have really been dedicated to making sure that all of our students are safe out at recess and getting what they need. Another piece is our students and staff participated in the holiday cards for our military program again this year. Last year, students from New Hampshire schools sent over 50,000 cards overseas to active military, and this year, once again, Hampstead Central School staff and students participated in that effort. We have a new initiative in our building called our Sketchbook Club. Mr. Torelli and Mrs. Stark have been working very hard with our fourth graders during lunch one day a week to encourage them to be sketching and working on their artwork. There was such an enormous response that it's actually been split into two different groups, so that way all of the students that are interested can participate. We have a garden in the back of our school, and this year our students and teachers have really taken ownership of that, and they have worked to beautify it. Staff has been staying after school to work on the garden. Our Ventures students have been measuring and planning and prepping, so it's really become a lovely project-based opportunity for kiddos and a beautification project for staff. The final piece that I want to share with you tonight is around Veterans Day. We held our annual Veterans Day Assembly last week, where Mrs. Craig, our technology teacher, had a slideshow that honored the veterans that were related to students and staff in our building. Our fourth graders sang, and it was a lovely celebration celebrating those who have served. So that's all from Central School. Any questions? Thanks.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone, on this cold, cold evening. I'd just like to give you a few bulleted pieces of information of news from the nest. Our students, as I had told you before, had participated in the UNICEF fundraiser. They completed that, raising over $300 trick-or-treating. The final numbers came in for our St. Anne's Food Pantry. We raised over 3,000 donations, which is pretty wonderful. Keep Our Veterans Warm. We kicked off this program at our Veterans Day Assembly last week, where we are going to be collecting coats, hats, scarves, gloves, and soup for our veterans that are housed at the Liberty House in Manchester. Toys for Tots, we start that collection, and we're going to be working with our musical Elf to combine together to collect toys and presents for children during the holidays. Ms. Bartik, our fifth grade teacher, has now created a newspaper club for all grade levels. There was a lot of students involved in there, so Penny, watch out. My kids are going to be looking for you. And Mrs. Mayu is our new advisor for our student council. And this year, we've expanded it to include fifth graders and sixth graders as well, which is going to feed us with young leaders, not just the upperclassmen. And Play for the Cure, the final numbers came in for that, of raising over $3,000. We have new advisors for our yearbook committee this year. Mrs. Hanson and Mrs. Carrillo will lead the work. And our athletic news, we're going to be celebrating our athletes this evening. I will leave it at that. Our Veterans Assembly, on Friday, we were honored to have John H. McCardle. He is a U.S. Navy veteran and the current commander of the Thresher Base of the United States, and he was our distinguished speaker, along with many veterans from the community, and it was a lovely outpouring to honor the heroes that walk amongst us. It was a good conversation with students about the difference between Veterans Day and Memorial Day, and that we had refreshments in the library, and kids got to speak and talk to our veterans in a personal way. So it was a very special event. Red Ribbon Week was a success. We had a DEA officer from Boston, Kevin Conway, who is the brother of Mark Conway, was here, and the DEA commanders wanted to thank Hampstead. We're the only school in New Hampshire that's ever had a DEA officer in, and he just spoke to kids during lunch and talked about making good choices, good healthy choices to have a successful life. So we were proud of that. On the back side of my report, I just gave you kind of a bird's eye view of integration. And I know one of your school board goals is about appreciation of diversity and inclusivity. This is just a rundown of how we take that integration goal and spread it out through UA and the 8th grade team this past couple of weeks, all on the, how do I say it, guys? Dia de las Muertas? See? Yeah. See? Okay. So those are all the activities that went together with regards to climate change, food, culture, science, and it was, I thought it was a very successful event. So, thank you.
Any questions? Thank you. Emma, I think you're up. Thank you.
All right. So we had the fall play on October 18th, 19th, and 20th. That was a huge success. It was Metamorphosis. It was put on by Pinkerton Players, and it was a rendition of ancient Greek mythology. That was really easy for the audience to understand, so that was good. Their next show is Almost Maine on December 6th, 7th, and 8th at the Stockbridge Theater. Freshman reception was held on October 25th, and as a student council member, I was able to go. The incoming class of 2023 was able to meet new teachers and newly elected class officer members and student council members. Like the middle school, Pinkerton also did activity for Red Ribbon Week. The Leadership Council of Athletics made initiatives to support students who've been affected by drug addiction. DECA, which is a business club at Pinkerton, gave students the opportunity to sign a sheet of paper promising that they would stay drug-free as well. Sports. So fall sports have almost come to a close. I think cross country is still finishing out, and cheer finished first this past weekend. Field hockey lost in the quarterfinals, and girls soccer also lost in the quarterfinals. Boys cross country finished second in the state. Winter sports meetings began last week and this week, and tryouts are starting at the beginning of December. On November 1st, Senator Shaheen came to Pinkerton to talk with a small group of students about the vaping problem in New Hampshire and to discuss solutions with those select students. Sophomore semi, put on by Class Office of 2022, will be held on November 16th, which is this Saturday, I believe. The DECA Fall Conference, like I said, DECA is a business club that competes all over the country, went to Fall Conference on Thursday, October 31st, where students went to workshops to learn about the club and also competed in a mini competition to prepare for states in February. And finally, the Waterville Conference. So Pinkerton Student Council went to a leadership conference in Waterville Valley, put on by the New Hampshire Association of Student Councils. So there was a hypnotist and different keynote speakers from around the country. And so this was this past Thursday and Friday, and we went up and spent the night there. So that was really fun.
Thank you.
Thanks.
That's it for tonight, right? Okay. Okay, moving on to current business. First up is our middle school field hockey and boys soccer league champions. Mrs. Noah?
Well, it is my pleasure to introduce our athletes who were very successful this past season. It wasn't easy. They worked so hard. I'm very, very proud of them. And part of, I guess, the benefit of watching them in the classroom and on the field, they are class acts, sportsmen, good character. I'm just very proud of these young men and women. I would let the coaches do an introduction to speak to you about their accomplishments. So first we have Miss Jackie Benson, who is the coach of the field hockey team, and she will introduce our captain.
I'm going to introduce, we have three captains. Unfortunately, four captains, three couldn't make it. So Lark Johnson, Ava Bennett, and Elizabeth Lavoie. We do luckily have Morgan Metzler here to kind of recap you on how the season has gone and maybe even last season a little. So here we go.
Hi everyone, I'm Morgan Metzler and I've been on the field hockey team for 4 seasons now. I was captain for 2 of those seasons and this team has taught me so much. And just being a part of it has been such an experience that I'm beyond lucky to have. I've learned and gained so much knowledge and strength from being on it through middle school. These past 2 years, we have been lucky enough to go to and win the 2 championships, and this year's score was a killer 5-0, and we had an undefeated season. Winning the championship was an outstanding feeling that I will never forget, and the memories and skills I have gained from being part of this team, I will never forget as well. And I would like to give a special thanks to all of the girls who have been on the team with me for the 4 years that I have been, and a huge thank you to my coach Jackie for teaching me and giving me the best 4 years on a middle school field hockey team that any coach could.
Thank you.
And they presented the plaque to me last week with regards to the league championship, so undefeated girls field hockey, brava. And now for our boys soccer team, who also won the Tri-County League Championship. This is 5th grade math teacher Samantha Wallach, coach of our boys soccer.
Hello, thank you for having us. We did not have captains this year, but these 3 gentlemen have stood out throughout the season for their leadership qualities and how hard they've worked. So I'm going to let them do the talking.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jack McDonald. I'm a scholar athlete for the Hampstead Hawks boys soccer. This season was spectacular. All of our players improved and played so well because of our amazing coach, Mrs. Wallach. She pushed us to our limits, which hurt at the moment, but made us better in the long run. We didn't have many injuries this year, which was good, but we took a couple hits. We pushed through during games, which got us to what we deserve, the championship. We played smart and hard, which gave us the win. I'm proud to be a part of this team, and I want to say thank you again to our amazing coach, Mrs. Wallach, and assistant coach, Mr. Fisher.
Good evening. I'm Aiden Dowd. I would also like to thank the athletic director, Mrs. Benson, for providing us with buses and all the parents and staff members who came to cheer us on during our games.
There you go.
I want to thank you all for coming tonight. These always are the best parts of our meetings, when we get to have the students here and hear about your accomplishments. It shows a lot of dedication to be in school and going to those practices and going to those games and being so successful. So congratulations to all of you as athletes, and congratulations to the coaches as well. Thank you. Yes, absolutely.
Good. And I wanted to congratulate, both teams. Fun to watch, and you guys were great. But certainly a special thank you to Coach Jackie and Coach Sam. They taught you how to be great soccer and field hockey players, but they gave you gifts well beyond that, and they're gifts that will last a lifetime. So, thank you. You've done great work with our kids, and we really appreciate it. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Do I take a brief recess so they can?
Yes, if you guys want to leave, you can. You don't have to stay for the rest of it.
About the budget? The educational opportunity.
They have to go home and do homework and go to sleep.
No, there's no homework. Thing, right?
No, they're 8th graders. They have
Oh,
homework.
okay. Does that mean you can go?
No, that's okay. I like staying.
Emma likes this.
Yeah, I like staying.
She's a participating member.
You drop the
just
mic
wait till the end of this, and then you
as
tell us that
walk out the
again.
door.
Okay.
Thanks for doing that.
Oh, absolutely. That's the best part of this job. Okay, next we have a discussion about the Central School construction renovation project. So last week we teamed back again with our construction committee, and they gave us preliminary numbers. What you have in your packet are the final numbers that they have come up with. And one of the reasons, I'm going to go through all this, but one of the reasons that we want to have this discussion, get this information out to the public, is this has been many years that we've been trying to renovate our Central School. I don't think anybody needs the whole rundown of the background of this, but we understand how daunting it is to look at a big number on the ballot. And we decided this year to look at this several different ways. What we asked our construction committee experts to do was to break this up into different phases. So some of the numbers that I'm going to share tonight includes doing everything all at once, but I'm also going to talk about what it looks like if we do certain sections individually, and talk a little bit about funding options. And as I go through this, one thing that I really want to put out to anyone in the public who's watching this is we're looking at this multiple different ways because we hear you as a town that we've not been successful in getting a big project passed. As a board, at this point, we have talked about that it doesn't feel right to do nothing, but so we need to continue this discussion. And I am fully open, as is anyone else on this board, I believe, to feedback. I'm going to give this information out there. If you have questions, if you have opinions on what you think is the most important phase or section of this, I'm asking for feedback. We're asking the town to tell us what their opinion is, and ultimately it will be the board as a whole who will decide what goes on the ballot. But we're looking for feedback before we do that. So, fair amount of numbers, but I do want to go through all of them. The revised cost for the total project, which I do need to note, we asked them to remove the cafeteria. We looked at anything we thought potentially could be cut. It's hard for me to even say anything can be cut because I do feel like all of these are needs, but we asked that excuse me, at this point be removed. So nothing in here includes the cafeteria section that we had on the last 2 years project that we did. So with that being said, the total cost of doing the project altogether would be $8,270,000 this year. The way that we broke it into phases or sections, we have Section A, which would include a new music room, the new library, and 2 fourth grade classrooms above that new library. If anyone's familiar with the plans in the past, it's basically the new construction along the back of the building. I do want to also say that the cost for this includes the design fees for all of the sections. So the cost for Phase A, again, the music room, the library, 2 new classrooms above the library, and an addition of a stairwell at the back of what is currently the 60s wing, would be $4,685,000. Section B, what Section B includes is the renovations to the 1960s wing and all fire protection installed there. So the 60s wing, to give a quick overview, includes a new envelope for that part of the building, new windows, new mechanicals, some renovations to the current bathrooms that are in the 60s wing, both on the first and second floor, because that section, the second floor of Central School does not have enough bathrooms, so it would include essentially more toilets for that section. So again, that's $2,350,000. Phase C, would be the administrative and nursing suite section. So again, if you're familiar with what the plans look like, that's the new administrative section that comes off what's currently the main entrance of the building. That includes new administrative offices, an improved secure entrance, something more similar to what you see at middle school now, kind of the 2 stages that you're being buzzed through. And then when we reference the nursing suite, because I'm not sure as many people were aware of this in the last plan, we would be turning what is now the music room, the stage, that section would be revamped into a nurse's office because a lot of what we were hearing, both from our construction and architect groups, was that having the nurse's office so far away from the main office is not ideal. So it would be revamping that area, as well as the main bathroom in that area. So the cost for that, for Phase C, is $1,530,000. So we've talked about the numbers a little bit. We've talked about the total cost, what it is for a phased approach. And I think now I want to talk a little bit about some of the ideas we're talking about how we fund, how we split this up. Obviously, one option is to put the whole project up again. I'm not sure that makes sense, but that is an option. We can also choose to put up any one or combination of the phases. We could put those up for warrant, for a bond. We've also talked about, do we find a way to make this work in the budget, or at least make part of this work in the budget? Additionally, we've got some capital reserve we could put forward to it. And then I did ask Mr. Dowd to be prepared to talk about the possibility of building aid from the state. We really haven't talked about this in years past because it was not something that was even going to be available to us. But with some other projects from the state nearing the end of their bond life, it's something that may be an option. It's never something that we can say to the town or say to voters, we absolutely will get that. But it's at least a larger chance of it than it has been in past years. Mr. Duck, can you just talk to that, just so everyone on the board is aware of what that means?
Well, good evening. Building aid is available through the state for building projects such as schools we are, in particular the project we're proposing. The state has indicated that they're interested in projects that are not brand new construction. They're more interested in working with existing buildings to retrofit, renovate, and bring those buildings up to the learning environments of today. So our project is squarely in their range. There are a number of bonds that have been supported by building aid over the past 20 years, and there's a significant drop in those existing bonds this year and next. So a lot of those bonds are paid off. Timberlands, for example, was paid off. So the amount of support provided by the state will decline. If the state continues to even level fund that building aid line, that presents a lot of opportunity for a lot of districts. What we need to do is have some sort of a plan in place and get our application for that plan into the state. As a general proposition, we're in about the 35% range for reimbursement. We are not at a very high priority, if you will, for preference. However, our standing on that list would go up significantly with the fact that we have a project and we're ready to go. If other districts have projects or have proposals but aren't able to fund their portion of them, then they get passed by, and whoever is next on the list would be the one to qualify. So I think we're in a good position in that regard. So there are some positives out there that we have not seen in years past, and it's out there. It's never a guarantee, and unfortunately, the way that our appropriation cycle works, building cycle works, and the way that the aid is distributed don't really tie, so that we could say, hey, if we propose a project, could we be guaranteed a certain amount of aid and work it into your project planning? It just doesn't work that way. You have to move forward with your project, show that it is a viable project, get your application in, and go from there. It's a very strange, somewhat backward environment, but certainly I'm happy that the aid is there, and that if we're in a position to utilize that aid, we could do so. So the bonds that were supported that are now being paid down or paid off, that was a different model. And so what the state is doing now is not committing itself over the long term. What the state is doing is, if you have a project and you qualify for funding and you're able to fund it, they will provide funding to you for that project in increments, but 100% you'd be essentially 100% funded upon completion. So if you went to seek a bond, you wouldn't have to seek a bond for the total amount of the project, as was the case in the past, and then you make your payment and the state pays you over the course of 20 years, or reimburses you over the course of 20 years. You simply get paid the state's portion and you borrow that much less if you qualify. So it's a little bit different than what we've seen in the past. It is a unique option that I shouldn't say unique, but a unique option to this project. We really haven't had a very good likelihood of success in obtaining those funds in the past. And I think that it seems reasonable now that we would be able to get in that queue and be a viable player for those funds.
Great, thank you. Does anybody have, yeah.
Can you speak to the timing? Like if we had a warrant that got passed in March, plan submission would be when?
December of 2020.
Okay, so we couldn't submit until 9 months later.
You could submit any time before that.
Okay, so we can submit any time. December they choose?
December would be when they close, and they would then begin their further evaluation of the projects. And then we would expect to see an order ranking of the projects as seen by the department.
And then when is the result?
I don't know how long it's going to take them to turn around. I wouldn't expect that it would take more than 3 months.
Okay.
And then we would only know where we fell in the ranking, and then if we're ready to go and someone else isn't ahead of us, we would get bumped up.
Okay.
But it is important to note that when that application goes in, it goes in as presented. And so if you have a project and project costs go up, if a project goes in, it's not voted upon or acted upon, that's the amount. That's the amount for the subsequent year. So if your construction costs go up, that's on the district.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions for Jeff? No. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I've given you kind of the general information. I would like to have a little bit of a discussion about if anyone has questions, have any thoughts, if you need more information, feedback from those of you who were not on the committee, on the construction committee and not in that meeting.
Could you explain note 1? Because that,
Yes, yes. Okay, so for everyone who doesn't have this in front of them, note 1 said phases must be taken in this order for phases budgets to be as listed. Thank you for bringing that up. I
is
should have
that
mentioned it.
because the construction costs are built into phase A? Is that the only reason?
Basically, the best way and the most efficient way to do this is for if we were to split it into phases and do it separately, phase A makes the most sense to do first. Yes.
Okay. But, okay, I'm not even going to say that.
You can say it. Go ahead.
No, it just, you know, what's more important to us? Because if we get a $5 million bond passed, I'm thinking the other phases.
Yeah, no,
Will
I
never
mean,
happen.
yeah, it's absolutely
never
a good.
happen.
Right. And now, some of that too that we.
People move out of Hampstead and forget there was a project.
Yes, yes, I agree. This is, you get one phase, basically. But one of the things we've talked about within the committee, and one of the reasons too why it might make sense to put that, maybe put phase A up as the bond, because the other two phases are a bit smaller as far as cost. Would those be more feasible to find a way to put into a budget in the future? Whether it was the same year and you make some reductions somewhere else in the budget to balance it out, whether you use capital reserve for part of it. So that was also one of the pieces of the discussion about why phase A makes sense. And one of the other reasons that they're talking about, it would need to be done in this order for the numbers to make sense, or for the numbers to be as they're listed, is if you notice in phase A, they talk about that stairwell addition. If we were to do phase B first, that number would change because the stairwell addition would need to be moved to that phase.
Right.
Because our stairwell in the 1960s wing is grandfathered. It's not up to current standards. It's too narrow and it's too open. So that number would change because you'd have to move that construction in, because once you start renovating that part of the building, we would need to address that stairwell. Any other questions or comments?
I just have a comment, not about price, but, well, part of it's price. If all of these were to pass, it would be $300,000 more for the total project.
If they were to be done separately, yes, thank you, we should talk about that, yeah. If the total project done altogether, as I mentioned, is $8,270,000. If you do it in a phased approach, or where you're not doing the project all together, it adds $295,000 to the total cost. So we add $300,000 if we do it in a phased approach.
My other just comment is I have the same concern that Jim mentioned, just about we do one phase and then we don't get the other ones at all. So, you know, maybe one phase is better than nothing, because that's what we've had in the past. So I understand thinking on that. But the other thing that isn't mentioned here is if we were to do all three of these, I look at what happens to disrupting the education.
Do you mean if we do them separately?
If you do them separately, if we do them all at once, the school is, you know, I think it was 18 months, there's construction and it's done. If we do this separately, the school's going to be disrupted at 3 different times.
Yep. Right.
So that's something that I would consider, not just the numbers, but the fact that the educational process is being disrupted 3 times if this passes.
else?
Since the stairwell is connected to the 60s wing, I'm wondering, like, did they think about putting that together? And like,
Yes.
Because I wasn't on the thing. Did you guys talk about, like, is that what would we want to do A first? Forget about money. Like, what does the school need first? If we had one
did.
project only,
Yep.
is it the music and the library and the 2 classrooms? Or is it the 2 classrooms and a stairwell in the 60s wing and fire protection? Is it, you know what I mean?
Well, so ultimately what we talked about, and one of the reasons that within the committee, the Phase A, again, made sense to do first, or potentially do first, is as much as we talk about the different needs, what we can't work around with Central School right now is space. We are out of space. So Phase A gives us the space because not only does it add a music room, a library, and 2 classrooms, we gain 2 additional classrooms from the current library because the space there can be made into 2. So with minimal disruption and with minimal cost, because really all that you would need to do there is put up a wall to make it 2 classrooms. So it's a hard discussion to prioritize these different pieces. You can argue that Phase 1 is space, Phase A, I'm sorry, I keep saying Phase 1. Phase B is renovations that are sorely needed because we know the issues with the 60s wing and
Health and safety, too.
Yep. And Phase C, you can look at as safety because it's revamping that front entrance. So it's a hard discussion to try to prioritize which one is most important. I think they're all important, but we also have to look at what we have to work with, and because nothing passing doesn't move us further down the road.
Right.
And that's not to say that a smaller project passes, but it's something that we have to be discussing. So our next steps as a board, and I will not be asking for any sort of vote tonight, but I would like everyone to think about if they have additional questions for our construction team, if they have any additional information they need, and really to think about ideas about how we do this, how we split it up, how we don't split it up, how we fund. David and I have had some discussions through the construction committee about that, about potentially putting something up for a bond and also seeing where we can make budgetary changes to fund part of it.
I think one thing that we'll have to ask is, let's just say Phase B is the first one, the 60s wing is the one that passes. Magic Land, that's what passes. What is the actual cost? Because then you get the stairwell in there then.
Correct.
Plus the additional costs that are rolled into Phase A. So we'll need to know if one of those passes ahead of Phase A, what would that additional bump be?
Yep, we can talk about that too. Yep.
And how to put the language into a warrant in case those things happen. Right?
Yep. Yes.
I think one of the questions, and I know members of the public may be thinking, is the cap removed from the entire project or just the phased approach? So
It is removed from the entire project.
as we said, we removed it completely. So
Yes.
I think that's a little confusing because some people.
Yep. We removed it, and in doing that, we also removed some of the circulation space that was added. It was along the side of the gym to connect the building.
Meaning a traffic pattern,
Yes.
not air circulation.
Oh, sorry, yes. People circulation.
Oh, so that's gone?
That is gone.
Well, one of the, if I may.
Yes.
One of the things was, even though it was removed, the way this project was phased out, that it would be something they could do in the future and enclose the courtyard. So I think they sectioned this off with the idea that in the future, if you wanted to add that, that could be a Phase D, if you would, standalone project, so.
And just like the cafeteria, 10 years down the road, if one wanted to put that up.
Yeah,
Or someone from Hampstead wanted to pay for that.
yeah, I mean, if somebody wins the
Rich
lottery.
benefactor.
I mean, that'd be great.
I think that's primarily the question, though, why did we remove it from the project altogether, I think is, right? And it primarily had to do with cost.
It was cost. It was where can we possibly cut something? Not because we didn't think it would be beneficial. You know, we had discussions early this year, I believe Mr. Collins brought it here, we had a grade split up for lunchtime because they couldn't all fit.
Yeah. I was at Lunch Buddies today and saw that. It's not good.
But we needed to find a way to reduce where we could.
Another question. I know that the Trident works with us, and obviously the board asked for this phased approach, so you were given it. But I'm curious, what was Trident's, do they have an opinion over doing a total project all at once or a phased project? What would their recommendation be?
Well, their recommendation, cost-wise, is that if you do it at once, it's less money. However, Trident has been on board for a long time and was very candid about the fact that this town is not passing a full project. So,
What, something to think about, right? Because I've had some people reach out and they were, that was a part of the project, Back to the CAF, was something that they thought they wanted to see as part of this project. Would it be something that we'd be willing to revisit as part of this, or?
I don't, at this point where we're in mid-November, I don't know that it makes sense to ask them to go back again and redo more numbers and more plans. Because there was.
Would it be fair just to call it a Phase D and maybe look at that? And I'm not looking to start the work in the middle of the work, but I know
Well,
there's some.
if I look at that over administrative or 60s wing or fire protection or music library classroom, it would be Phase D. So it's already going to be chopped at this point, right? So Phase D for me is 10 years from now, when we might be able to put it back on the books, if I'm even around. I think it's all valid, and I don't want to split it up. But nothing's changed where 8.27 is going to pass. If this lobby was full with Mother's Club, Kiwanis Club, every club, the fire chief, the police chief, the selectmen, then that's a change. But there's been no change. There's no one here. There's no one ever here. So we have to come up with another way forward.
I'm just concerned that if 8 million won't pass, I don't know why we really think 5 million will either.
Oh, I'm not, I haven't made a decision on this. We got to do that together, but if we do the same thing, that's, I don't know, that's a little definition of crazy, doing the same thing,
Yes, it
trying
is.
to expect the same result. I mean, I'll knock on doors and hand out flyers, but when you do something with only a couple of people, you're not going to get any different result, you know? We had a marketing firm and a ground game and volunteers and all that stuff, maybe, but it's normally just us and our spouses and a couple other people that end up doing stuff, administrators. So I don't see any change where 8.27 is going to pass. But trying to put something in the budget and breaking it up, I think that's the only way. I don't want to say that, believe me. I'd rather say put the whole thing up, you know? But I don't think that's realistic, unfortunately.
Caitlin?
Yep.
So my intention is really to try to get as much information as I can to as many people and to help as any way I can. We talked a little bit about thought exchange with the staff more involved in these phases, and you know, perhaps attending a Board of Selectmen meeting. Talked to a couple of them just to try to get and bring back as much as I can in terms of what people have to say, opinions, and as you get through your discussion as to see what the best way to move forward is, That's what we can do. And anything else that you want me to try to help with, to try to figure out the best plan. I think two things we agree on is, and I think the whole town agrees, that school needs work. It's just how, when, and what is, I think, those are the questions that I think people disagree on. I don't get a lot of disagreement. I think most people agree that something needs to happen there. They just don't, we're having a hard time agreeing as to what. Not us, but, you know, the whole town and getting that kind of 60% or better support for that. If we can find the answer to that question, obviously, we'd be in great shape in March.
Right.
So if I can. You know, looking at it in three different pieces, you know, I think that one thing we need to talk about is the strategy around this, which is there any one of these three that we could try to roll into the budget? I think that's one thing we should talk to. Can we be creative, look at what we can and cannot do this year? Then we need to look at what do we go forward with the warrant, right? But then talking about what Ms. Dowd spoke to with the building aid, that's 30%. You know, if that's out there and that's a possibility, that could pay for one of these phases. So that there's ways to get this done in the next few years if we do it, you know, methodically and open to the public what our approach is. I think if we just say, hey, there's three out there, which one do you want? But if we can have a plan of attack, you know, and it's hopeful, of course, because you don't know how it's going to be voted, but there are different ways to do this. And by having it in three different pieces, there might be bite sizes that we can do now versus here's what we need to vote on versus, hey, if we get this and we get the building aid, it'll pay for another one of these. And then we can also say, hey, in 5 years, maybe it's not 10, maybe it's not 20 years, we get a CAF also because we've gone through this methodically. I just think a different approach is needed at this point.
I would like to see if we can do some sort of workshop on this, because I think it will be beneficial for all of us to be able to talk about it. Certainly, Dr. Metzler would like you to be there, and Mr. Dowd, where you're kind of our expert on bonding and et cetera, if you could be there as well. Melissa, I don't know if tomorrow, can you send an email and we can find dates?
Certainly.
That might work for everyone.
Of course.
Just in general, do people like the kind of before a meeting approach, or do you want to do like a separate night?
I'm not, you know, obviously you know how busy I am.
I know,
But I
I
do
know.
believe the standalone night is better because we end up spending 2 hours on
Right,
whatever we're talking
right.
about. It just seems to be, and that Tuesday, those Tuesday nights seem to be the night that is the best night for us. I don't know about, but
We're going to need time on it.
Yeah,
It's not
well,
gonna
that's
be
right.
a half hour
Right,
before a meeting.
right.
We need a standalone workshop. We're going to go down that road.
Okay, so we'll find a date to do that. Again, I am asking anyone in the public who's watching this meeting who will give you information if you want more details about this. You can find all of our email addresses on the district website. Mine is parnellc@hampsteadschools.net. And everybody else's is on there. I'm not going to run down them all, but they're all on the district website. If you have feedback, please give it to us, yes.
how does the 19th look, a week from tonight? Does that work for anybody, or is that too soon, or?
There is a chorus concert on the 19th.
Yeah.
So it doesn't look very good.
No, because I know at least,
And we have negotiations.
oh, we have negotiations too, yes. That 19th would not be great.
We meet on the 26th. Is there another night?
We do.
I mean, do you want to meet, is the plan to try to meet before the 26th? Okay.
Yeah, because I know that our construction team wants to be prepared to come to our meeting in December. I think it's the 12th or something. The 10th, I think it's the 10th. So it would be good for the meeting after the 26th for them to be prepared to come and talk about what the plan is and what it means.
I don't have their entire calendar in front of me. Usually band and chorus are back-to-back nights, right? Is that usually?
They're the same.
Oh, they're
No, I
together?
think they're all, yep.
Got it, okay. What's the 20th?
Open
look
up
like?
any other day except for
Any.
that one.
Any day.
Any day next week?
Yeah, we can come here instead of Timberlane meeting, so we can swap that out.
That's tomorrow.
Okay.
Let's just come here instead.
I'm game for tomorrow.
Tomorrow? Oh, no, okay, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
We have budget requirements, we have to.
Oh, that's right.
Monday, the 18th? Throw it out there.
I'm okay on Monday. Dr. Metzler, I know you don't.
Yeah, no, I'll make it work.
Okay. Do we, is 6 o'clock okay, or do we want a 7 or a 6:30?
It's traveling from,
I'm talking about you you people
I'd
travel.
rather 7,
Yeah, that's fine.
because most likely I'll be in Boston, so.
Yes, okay. Let's say 7 then? Okay. So 7 o'clock, Monday, the 18th. As we all put it in our.
Got it.
Okay, thank you. Next up is the budget discussion. Mr. Dowd. You're just up here now for a while, so.
Well, good evening again. You should have in your packet a brief summary and a copy of the 2021 draft operating budget for review. So we met, and speaking of the effectiveness of work sessions, we met a week ago, I believe, and had a work session at which time administration's full budget was presented of $28,821,239, which represented a 3.21 increase over the current year budget of $27,926,000. At that session, we had, I think, a very productive discussion in terms of scaling back some of our requests and understanding a bit more of what the board was looking for in that budget. And as a result of that, I'm very pleased to present tonight budget totaling $28,755,801, which is now under 3, it's a 2.89% increase over the current year budget of $27,926. So some of the things that have changed since our discussion, I had removed the $100,000 from the 1800 account. Thank you, Dave. I removed the request for staging and euphoniums. In looking at the positions that we had, there was a request for an additional ASD teacher, which I do not believe was picked up in the initial budget that was presented to you, so I've added that in at $52,137. As discussed, I reduced special ed transportation, $50,000. Added tuition for a student I wanted to make sure was covered, and it looks like it was included as part of the original budget number that was presented. So that number actually can be further removed from the budget. And I've added insurance, which is ancillary to the teaching position previously mentioned. So removing that $40,425 from the current budget as presented brings the new number to $28,675,127, which is a 2.83% increase over the prior year. So we're down from the budget that we had presented at the workshop to tonight of $105,863. So in that budget and at the budget workshop, we covered a lot of different areas. I didn't know if anyone had any specific or particular questions or inquiries on the budget. I can run through any areas.
Jim, do you have a question?
So, I mean, just so everybody knows, it's not down 105,000.
No, it's down from
when we first started this, right?
It will be down 100 as of tonight when.
No, when we first started, the
Correct.
percentage was well over 3%.
It was 3.21, yep. 3.2.
No, our first night, wasn't it?
Talking about
The first time we did it.
Oh, that may have been higher, yeah.
Right.
So we've
What was that? I don't,
initially.
I'm looking.
right.
Yeah.
So I just want people to know we didn't go down 100 grand. We went down
Oh, from that first session, yes.
Our first session and working through all that.
You're correct, yeah.
I don't remember what that number was.
I don't either.
But it
I
was,
have multiple versions here,
Yeah.
so.
it was above 7%.
Yeah, initially. It-
Okay.
That sounds about right, yeah. I
Yeah.
didn't pull the first version out.
Let's be safe to say it was above 7%. So it's not, okay, I just want people to know.
Thank you for the clarification on that.
Any other questions? We can take a few minutes to review as well,
Yeah.
if people want to do that.
Some of the assumptions, just for the public, in this budget are Pinkerton tuition increases at 4% over our current, we don't have the actuals yet for Pinkerton that I know of. We're looking at 4% overall for Pinkerton on the regular education side.
That was initially budgeted at 5%, but we were able
That's
to
right.
negotiate and get a guaranteed 4% or lower, so we're in good shape there.
That's right. And we may have more opportunity there depending on the numbers come in. We also have $250,000 in our improvements line, building improvements line, which is one of the last lines in the budget. That's up from where it is in the current year. In the current year, we're at $134,000, but if you recall, we had some opportunities to move some of the projects in the budget, which would have been budget items for this year into the previous year. And that $250,000 covers a number of projects, which we had discussed, and leaves some opportunity for room in the event that any other projects come up. What that $250,000 will do is continue on our progression at the middle school of the renovation of classrooms, further address some of the air quality issues that we have, particularly at Central School, and a number of other areas that have been identified as in need of attention. Our GMR is down, actually, slightly in the current year. However, and that's on page 11 at account 2900, the amount that we've been running for insurance has been very close, if not above. It's actually been a little bit above where our budgeted numbers have been. So even though our GMR is showing that we're going to be down, I think it's only fair to keep it a little higher than the current year due to what appears to be an overage every year on that budget line. And I think that our retiree group insurance subsidy costs, direct out of pocket, out of our budget, are about $100,000 in the current year.
I think the only one that stands out for me, and we might need this for non-public, but the legal fees. I don't know if that's enough.
Right. I think that's something we need to discuss with various pieces in front of us and potential withdrawal. What page is that on? 'Cause
That is on page 7, about halfway through.
Right, so right now, we're budgeting 45,000?
Hmm?
I am inclined,
To double.
I was going to say 20,000 more, but
Oh,
you think double?
you're a glass half full person.
I am. I mean, let's see. The past few years, we've basically,
It's not, the run rate's not great. You know, we're at about
Right.
43, down to 18, up
Right.
to 48. Depends on whether we have union negotiations going on.
right,
If anything comes up, how many perhaps special ed due process cases we may have. Looking into next year, I don't know that you're so heavy on the union negotiations end,
right,
but
we have one, because we're doing HEA and HAS this year,
HESPA maybe.
yes.
But you may have other potential intervening
Right,
situations, so.
so I think my suggestion would be 40,000 added to that line.
Okay, there's two ways to do that.
Right.
Obviously, is the way you just said it, add 40,000, and I feel really good about the bottom line. The other thing would be to direct us to try to find that within
Well,
the
that's the next
existing
question.
numbers.
Right.
Somehow, some way.
Would we have flexibility to move if we needed to?
Well, you're not talking moving. We were talking about moving it in the proposed budget, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Sorry,
okay.
yes.
Not next year.
No,
right
I'm
now.
talking about moving it in the,
I'm more than happy to take a look and see what I can do and maintain that bottom line.
okay. I mean, does any other board members have thoughts on if they feel like a $40,000 number is appropriate or more or less? I mean, Jeff's going to look into it, but.
I think it's appropriate.
Okay. Okay, so Jeff, if you can look and see if we can move anything.
Yeah. And you'd like that to be an additional 40 on that line?
On that line,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
We can find it somewhere. Yeah.
Okay. I know we can't really finalize this anyways, because just as we just discussed with construction, we have to have that meeting and see if we're gonna try to do anything budgetary-wise. So,
We can be prepared to do both.
okay,
Right? On Monday, the 18th, so.
I'd rather,
Bring your budget documents with you.
I could, yeah, and I'd also like to see what we have for, if we have those Pinkerton final numbers.
I'll ask.
Yeah. No rush, as long as they.
Emma's got a better shot than I do. But, no.
we'll put her on it. That's your job.
He'll drive them nuts.
Okay, so that's the proposed budget.
Yeah.
Any questions on that before we talk about default? Because that's next on our agenda. No, okay. Now we can go to default.
Perfect. So I did not include the default in the packet because it was correct in the presentation. Looks strikingly similar in presentation, so sometimes it's a little bit easier to take a look at them discreetly and one at a time. You can see that that budget, as proposed, is up 2.81% at $28,710,981 versus a current year of $27,926,104. So in going through, as we discussed at the workshop, and going through and looking at the default statute and our budget, I look for one-time items in the budget to remove. I look for additions in other obligations that we have, contractual obligations that we have. I also look for areas that we've already approved, such as any union or labor pieces that have been approved as part of a previous warrant. And you'll see that in large part, our increases are due to, for the most part, contractual obligations, a large part of that being the Pinkerton tuition numbers. Those are contracted numbers at this point. So I'm working with the best numbers I have to include those in the budget.
Okay, take a minute to review this and then see if anyone has questions. Okay, any questions that anyone has about the default? Okay,
You're good on that? Excellent.
I think we're good on that, which moves us, you're still here? Oh. Are we ready to? I guess the default's not going to change, correct?
Again, it may just, with respect to any new information that comes up, tuitions, et cetera, if you wanted to vote on the default number tonight, that'll at least allow me to proceed. If there are any changes, I can let you know.
Okay.
And you can simply re-vote on it.
Okay, well,
Do you want me to ask the question, or do you want to ask the question? Right.
you asked the question.
So, so you feel like this was done correctly by RSA, and you feel like you can defend every line and right up to the bottom line in the default budget?
I do.
Perfect.
Thank you very much. Can I have a motion to accept the 2020-21 default budget as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next, Mr. Dowd is going to be talking about our middle school crosswalk, ongoing discussions, and
Do you have any idea how much time he has spent on this?
I think he's spent, I appreciate the amount of time he has spent on this.
This is like a dissertation coming, I can feel it.
Yeah.
I really wanted some answers here.
We have visuals. Love it.
Thank you.
Nice. You're gonna get answers to questions you didn't even have.
I know that house.
So briefly, just to sum up, what you see in front of you here, you do have a brief visual, what you see in front of you right here, oh, that doesn't seem to want to work, is an a sky view of Route 121 intersecting School Street. And this is an old one, and you'll see that there in fact was a crosswalk there not too long ago, which solved that question for me because I really thought there was a crosswalk there, and I said, where did it go? And when they resurfaced the road, the Department of Transportation made a determination that the current location and setup of that crosswalk was not adequate. So therefore, it got paved over and never replaced. So and I'll give kudos because Sally Theriault had started the discussion with the Department of Transportation. I've since picked up on that discussion, understand what it is that they'd be looking for and what it entails for us as a district. So a couple quick things. The current location of the crosswalk is too close to the intersection. It should be farther back. A couple of the requirements that the state is now looking for are sidewalks, and I've put in approximately where the sidewalks would go, perhaps a little bit further down here. The sidewalk would allow someone with a disability to safely get to that crosswalk, and they're now requiring a sign, if you will, not a sign, but a lighted sign. Let me scoot down here. Something to this effect, designating that there is a crosswalk. So you press the button, and they're not looking for anything to go over the road. It's just something that's going to be above a sign that will light up, strobe, or something to get your eye's attention. So the sidewalk would lead to this, which would then, you would then activate to be able to go across the street safely. In addition to that, and those would go very close to where the crosswalk actually crosses. But in addition to that, the state is recommending, and I have no idea, but they're recommending overhead streetlights ahead of the person crossing in the line of oncoming traffic. So now that these are being apparently required, so that as you're approaching a crosswalk in a vehicle at night, the light is not shining over the people in the crosswalk, the light is shining ahead of them. So it's illuminating them. And that would be on both sides. So we have one ahead of the crosswalk on the southbound side and one ahead of the crosswalk on the northbound side. The gray arrow that you see, thankfully there's already a street light there. So the location, which may work, would be proposed and may be able to benefit from that light being there. However, we would need to address that issue of a street light on the other side, and that's the orange arrow right there. And because the state is looking to have that 10 feet ahead of the crosswalk, it would need to be much farther up than what we have right now. Now, initially, when Sally was dealing with the state on this, I think that the discussion was having a crosswalk, moving it over to the northbound side. That didn't make a lot of sense. I talked to the state. They said, yeah, you know what? The south side makes sense, but, you know, here are our requirements. Oh, look, we can leverage the existing street light, and you would need another one in there. So you would need a crosswalk button with a signal on each side. You would need a light on each side. You'd also need a sidewalk, and the problem with the sidewalk is theoretically it would fit into the state's right-of-way for Main Street, but we're not exactly sure where that right-of-way extends to. Looking at where the telephone pole is now, that seems to be a good indicator as to where the state's right-of-way is. You could see that it would be snug, but it would be likely that a crosswalk would fit on that side. On the other side, it would probably require some site work. There is a little bit of a hill there. It's not quite so clear, and you may need to get into easements, both for the street light, if it had to go in, and for the sidewalk, if it was necessary, if we don't or can't prove how far out the state's right-of-way goes. So that's a little insight. I hope that's helpful to the situation we're currently in. When sidewalks are installed, again, just a short stretch, they would need to be maintained in all weather. And that would need to be done a day after, not longer than a day after a storm. So of course, the problem with it is you're not clearing, if it snows a foot, you're not clearing a foot of snow, you're clearing 3 feet of snow. It's all the bankings. And here it's a corner, so it's probably even a little bit more. That would need to be done. And whether it's the town or the school district, we would have to sort that out. Other towns have snow blower units that go down, and that's what they do. The city of Havel, for example, because they have miles and miles and miles of sidewalk. We don't. So that if something like this were to be undertaken, we would need to determine whether the town or the school would be responsible for the maintenance of that sidewalk in inclement weather. Again, it's not the whole length of the street, it's just those 2 sections right there, but they would need to be attended to. So those are some factors for consideration. Loose estimates on the cost between wiring, hardware, engineering, survey, all that. Low end, 40,000. On the upper end, it could be a lot more than that, depending on what level of power is needed for a street lamp here, and depending on if and whether easements would be necessary. So I'll put that out there for consideration. In speaking with the state, I get their point. Like I see I see this as a much safer option. If they're going to formally acknowledge a crosswalk on a state road, it should at least be safe. So what they did say was that crosswalk button that you would normally press right here with the strobe lights, there are options that it may not require power. It could be fitted with a solar panel at the top. I'm not sure about the street lamp as well. So yes, all of this for a crosswalk.
And did I walk in on a conversation today where you needed Wi-Fi too?
What's that?
Or internet for the crosswalk?
No, I don't. I'm hoping he's not hearing you say that, because it might be a new thing on the list. So
you're saying the state offers zero assistance?
Correct. What they do offer is the number to the Rockingham Planning Commission, who may be able to point us in the way of some grants. I don't know if safe walkways to schools is still an option for a grant. I believe there is another grant out there that may assist in this sort of endeavor. However, I wouldn't even know what to ask for without some engineering in the first place. Wouldn't even know what the cost would be to apply for a grant. And the first step in that type of process is to have an engineer take a look at it. It may require some research into ownership on either side of the road. And then a proposal would go to the state, be approved by the state. And at that point, I think we'd have a good cost as to a good estimate as to what the costs would be to undertake that. So.
And the town's response or responsibility, or?
Town, I don't know that the town would be inclined, at least it didn't seem like they were necessarily inclined to absorb that level of expense. The cost in years past was whatever that paint cost to put across the road, and a couple signs indicating there was a crosswalk. So it's a significant, burden that, let's face it, were it not for the school, wouldn't be there. In fact, I'm not even sure if the town would be committing to maintenance on the sidewalks. Just because it's an outlier for them. They're out clearing parking lots and streets and all of that, and
So kids crossing a road, but a car that has four wheels and four-wheel drive is more important than a kid, okay.
And are we required to have this?
we're not required, no. No, we're not required. It does answer the question, you know, gee, I thought we had one there not long ago, and yeah, we did. We did. But,
Are there guidelines with how long the sidewalks have to be?
yes, I believe they were looking at about 15 feet in length and between 5 and 8 feet wide.
And just throwing it out there, maybe some way to get some more information. Pinkerton just had to have the same strobes installed at their crosswalks going across bypass 28, and they are solar powered. Maybe somebody through Pinkerton's grounds crews or their maintenance team might have some information. They might even have some guidelines that they had to adhere to from the state level that might be good information for us to try to pick their brains on.
Yeah, that's a good tip, actually, and I had a hard time because I couldn't really find what it was that they were, you know, anticipating, what they were trying to describe.
It looks just like that with the strobes, and at the very top, it is outfitted with a solar panel.
Yep.
So that it is, and they're bright, they're used day and night. I mean, I've gone by and I've seen them, they go from the student parking across the street.
Is that a state road?
It is a state road. It's state bypass 28,
Yep.
so.
That's right, it is, okay, yep.
So it is a state road. They may have some extra information that we haven't seen yet.
Would be helpful, thank you for that.
Jeff, did we do any, any idea about usage? Obviously, we want everybody to be safe if one person's crossing, and that's not why I bring that up. I was just
Right.
curious as to how many people are crossing there on a daily basis.
Well, it's interesting, because I asked the middle school principal how many walkers we have that may be crossing Main Street. Very few. I would almost think we'd have more bicyclists in the spring and in the fall. What was interesting is the state agent had asked, you know, I understand you provide transportation, bus transportation, with no restrictions on the geographical distance from the school. I said, that's correct, and part of that is that we don't have sidewalks anywhere in town. He said, you know, don't lose sight of that. You're already, you know, you're offering safe passage to and from school in that regard, anyway, as it stands now. So I think that this is, for Pinkerton, for example, this is probably nothing that they're terribly surprised at, because they probably had to look at this over the years. I think for us, it's a big hit. It's a big amount. I think it's a big project compared to what it was before. Previously, it was just a lot, so a lot more of an undertaking. Although, you know, granted, it is safer. The state did provide some statistics on the fact that there were quite a few fatalities relating to unsafe crosswalks. By unsafe crosswalks, crosswalks that aren't properly lit, for example, at night, might give the user a false sense of security. And when you look at the options that they have, it seems like it would be a pretty safe, you know, as safe as you can get with the strobes and you know, having everything lit from the front on either side of the road so you can see the pedestrians. So I'll ask what's next.
Well, one, thank you for all of the work you did on this, because this information doesn't seem like it's really readily available, that you kind of had to go digging for it. So thank you for doing this.
Sally gave me a great start, so.
And thank you to Sally and the town for giving information. Any feedback on, should we just put this on hold for now?
I think so.
That would be my inclination, that
I mean,
we have the information. Again, to reiterate what Dr. Metzler said, we do want everyone to be safe, but we have to be realistic about the fact we have very, very few walkers, and they can go on the bus.
Yeah, it may be something, if you had an appetite to support this at some point, it may be something you might want to look at in the spring of a year that we didn't have any snowfall and we had extra money in a particular line, that might be a year to take advantage of something like that.
Okay.
But I don't think right now we have this kind of room in the budget to come up with an extra $40,000 for it.
And I think that's minimum, I think maybe more than that.
And it's probably going to be more than that, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think we're in a tough situation as a town. This is not part of it's not part of our normal process. Manchester has sidewalks. This is just part of what they do. That takes a lot of the burden off automatically right away. You know, just even have them cleared. They're already there. If you want to put if you want to put a signal in, then it's a lot easier to do. And we're starting from the ground up here, both from from a physical perspective and an operational perspective.
It might be just a silly question to the principal, but do we offer any type of like just reminder to students, like look both ways, busy road, communication to parents that, there is this crosswalk there, something simple like that? Do we do that?
They have to be a crosswalk.
Generally, it's in our handbook, and be careful, and especially walking on which sides of the road against traffic, but we haven't put a big push on that.
Might be a good thing, because we don't have any.
The time when it would happen, a critical mass, and you remember like the last day of school, and the kids are walking down to get pizza or ice cream or something, and they all go down and they cross in there. But I think, other than that, I think, it's their individual kind of reminders if you see students walking. I don't see too many students walk, even in the morning if I'm driving up, and, you occasionally see a random one or two that live across the street. But we literally transport people by bus, like one house away from the school.
That's right.
At Central School.
To where the crosswalk is,
Yeah.
the other side of the crosswalk.
Right,
Ironically, the greatest amount of traffic that I see from the younger set is actually from Camp Telnor going to the convenience store. So how the students campers get across, I have no idea, but I don't know, they might come up here, they might not. So but right now, we have nothing here.
Yep.
So.
All right.
Have we ever had a crossing guard there? Was there ever a need?
No. No.
Not in the last 8 years, anyway.
So who put the crosswalk there in the first place, the one that got removed? Do you know?
I'm not sure. It may have been the town. It bears striking resemblance to the ones that we have out here on the town roads at Central School. I'm talking striking resemblance, like, yeah, the same guy did that type thing. So, yeah, you look at them and you're saying, yeah, that's sometimes they're lined or whatever. It's like, no, it's the same pattern, the same, whatever they used. So, and out here, I think we just go and put them in and that's it. And Jim, it's important. I think that it gets a little tough with a crossing guard because the crossing guard should be crossing students and pedestrians. And I think in a situation like that, you end up with the crossing guard directing traffic. And I think that presents and I won't say an unreasonable risk, but an unreasonable risk to the district, because if a crossing guard is there and someone says, well, no, she told me to go, and you win, that could put some liability back on the district, because some of that traffic control does rest with the people doing traffic control. If they say to go, you go, and you get in an accident, you're liable.
Okay, I think we're just
Okay, we're
holding
good
on
for now,
this
yeah.
for now. We have the information, and we can review it later. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, we have policies for second read. We have 4 of them: policy BIA, BDC, JKA, and IHBF. So again, these are for second read. If we vote to adopt, they go into effect.
I'll make a motion that we adopt the 4 policies presented.
Take a second.
Second.
Any discussion on these? All in favor of the adoption of the 4 policies?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, board comments and correspondence. David, do you have anything?
I attended the fall awards night. It was amazing. Fun to see the kids. And that's about it.
Dr. Metzler, we talked about having someone from Pinkerton here. Are we still working on that?
We're working on that. I talked to Dr. Powers, so he's working with his board of trustees about, and so he will be committing to some dates, but he couldn't commit right away. So
Okay.
we're into December, January, but that's in the works, I think. I know you sent some suggestions too, and so we've been talking to him about what that visit would look like. What I was trying to do is, it's hard because they have all those sending towns. It's a Hampstead request. So this isn't like your standard, you have to do this 5, 6, 7 times. This might be a little bit different. So I think he's working that out with the Board of Trustees about when to visit. So I'll keep asking.
Thank you. Okay. I attended the construction committee meeting, which was very helpful. Was able to attend the Hawk Awards this morning at middle school. And I have to commend the administration and the students of that school. This was an assembly like I had never experienced before. From the moment the kids started filing in to sit in the bleachers, Mrs. Denola, Mrs. Joseph, there were several other teachers, they were batting a beach ball around. The kids were like all pumped up. There was music going. And the Hawk Awards, I feel like, are a pretty special thing that gets to recognize students that the teachers, have interacted with. And it's a chance for everyone to do that. And not only did they give the Hawk Awards, they also had an activity from the ABC Club and an activity that National Junior Honor Society put together, which was a sight like I have never seen before. There were teachers involved, there were students involved, and what just struck me was how upbeat everyone was and how enthusiastic the kids were. I think I say this a lot about middle school, but it's a hard age, and the participation by the students when they would be asked to say something back or they would be asked to, quiet down when they needed to. It was instant. We have amazing students in this district, and I think, again, I know I say this a lot, but I do think it has a ton to do, it has everything to do with our teachers and our administration. So if you ever get the chance to go to a Hawk Award assembly, you got to go and be prepared for be ready to rock in your seat because it was very impressive.
I think you like that, right?
I
wasn't sure where you were going.
I know. No, but I really was blown. Come on, sitting in an assembly with 5th through 8th graders, there's a big opportunity for them to not be paying attention and for them to really be not interested. There was none of that.
Great.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Glad you had a good time.
I really did. It was a great way to start the morning at 8:15. It was ready to go.
I attended the Pinkerton Sending Town dinner, as did you.
Sorry, forgot about that.
It's informative. It's good to go and find out what Pinkerton is doing for our kids since we don't have a regular routine with them. So at least when we're there, we do get an update of what's going on. And the kids themselves, their program for the evening was something that was interesting. It was more interactive and made us get out of our seats. They did a program where we were immigrants and we had to go through the immigration process. And there were students there in different areas, and they were speaking different languages. We were given cards that told us who we were, how old we were, where we came from, and it was an experience just to see how they're teaching the kids about immigration and the process. And I was sent to the detention center twice, and because I couldn't speak the language, actually had no idea why I was there. But then you start the process over again. So it just gave some clarity. And I think the kids were doing that in class too, so they understand the immigration process better. So that was fun and something that was unexpected.
I'd like to point out I was the only one who got through that. I was the only one that made it out. Dr. Metzler was doing some schmoozing trying to get through some of those, but.
I made it through.
You did too.
I didn't follow the rules. That's what
No, you didn't.
So it was that, and then, of course, we had the Hsdsb. So we had the Hsdsb, and then 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 we had the Hsdsb, and from that all the way to lunch buddies, today, actually, and that went very well. You know, the cafeteria workers are doing a really nice job with the kids. The kids are experiencing a social time, which I think is great for them. I can remember back in the days where there were things like silent lunches and the kids couldn't talk, and I think that really just kind of worked against the idea of socializing lunch for the kids. So some of those methods of the past are gone. The kids seem to have a wonderful time, and it's still very orderly, and the cafeteria is being run very well. So thank you for everyone at Central School who has made those changes.
Okay. Moving on to the personnel report for the consent agenda.
Excellent. So, you know, at your last meeting, you accepted a resignation from a teacher that, at our middle school, and we appreciate that. And so we posted and began the interviewing process, and we were lucky to have the candidate that I bring to you this evening, Victoria Clark. She's someone that, you'll see she only had a short period of time in the Haverhill Public Schools. It's primarily because it was someone that we wanted to hire. We didn't have a position. She was able to start there and then saw the position. She really wanted to be here. She's relocated to southern New Hampshire. She's someone that, you know, the questions really was about where's the best fit was. So I know we had an 8th grade math teacher that resigned. We're going to be moving the 5th grade teacher to that 8th grade position. It was here earlier this evening, Ms. Wallach. And so she's got a tremendous math background that could handle that upper level math. This particular young woman has had some experience in math. You'll see a lot of experience in when you're an elementary school teacher. A lot of times, you know, it could be a number of different subjects based on the skills of your team. But we spent a great deal of time interviewing her, myself and Mr. Flynn and all the people on here, asking math questions, and she just seemed like a great fit for our 5th grade team. So I applaud the fact that she didn't give up on Hampstead, that this is really where she wanted to work. She did her homework. Really, she really researched the area and really wanted to work here. So I was glad that she was still interested when the team reached back out, and we were very excited. So it's without any reservations that I recommend Victoria Clark for your consideration for our 5th grade opening. So if you'd like to take this by itself, and then I can go through the rest of my report and do the consent thing.
Yeah, let's take this by itself. Can I have a motion to accept the personnel report and the hiring of Victoria Clark for middle school?
Second.
All in favor?
Great, thank you. You're going to be very pleased. She's a good one. They got a good one. Okay, the rest, bus recall. In your packets, the DOE notified of us of bus recall affecting over 50,000 school buses nationwide. The issue was associated with seats being manufactured with styrene blocks that may not provide sufficient impact absorption in certain specific areas around the steel seat frame and the back support. This means the buses do not comply with the safety standards, particularly those regarding school bus passenger seating and crash protection. The buses are not being called off the roads. Both First Student and Durham School Services have been contacted. First Student is aware of the issue. The state states this recall affects about 7,000 of their buses nationwide and is actively working to address the deficiency. The repair, which is to add material to increase the level of absorption, will take about 10 minutes per seat. Durham is also looking into the matter to determine how many, if any, of their buses are affected. The recall goes into effect on December 2nd. So we've been working with both bus companies, and they're taking care of this. I was very impressed with their response time. They were pretty quick. This came from the commissioner, so the commissioner picked up on this, got this to districts. We reached out and heard back from both bus companies, so we're in good shape there. Central School Construction Renovation Committee meeting we had, and so we're obviously we spent a great deal of time on that, and now we have another meeting scheduled for Monday the 18th, and I know there's a great deal of interest because I've already had some people reach out here, so there are people watching and paying attention, and hopefully going to be able to help us or help you with your discussion in terms of deciding what's the best way. You know, looking for both a budget strategy and a building strategy that aligns exactly with what the town wants. And I think that's really, if we can get the answers to those questions, I think we'll be in great shape. The IDEA funds misallocation at the October 22nd meeting. The meeting is being planned. I know, Karen, I don't know if you've heard it all. Karen from Darien? No. I can tell you that the superintendent from Chester is working really hard with the commissioner on this, and we're supporting him as he tries to get this. So he's reached out again. Commissioner reached back, so the commissioner is working on this on our behalf. So we don't have an outcome yet, but we hope to get one soon. So I'm hoping that you'll be able to get the meeting with the dairy folks to figure out what our plans are in the event that the commissioner can't reverse this situation. So he's working on it. Signage for our new KI policy, our visitors school property. I know Mr. Flynn, do you have a quick update on those signage?
So we got a proof back, and there was a problem with the proof, so that just went back. It admitted the word policy, so it said no firearms, weapons, BCKI, instead of telling people where to direct. So it was reproofing it, and then I'll have it for visual reference.
Excellent. So that's that. Recently, and we'll make this an agenda item in the near future. We had a visit from the Department of Education. They were going through our buildings and looking for safety issues, things that, like for instance, rugs and drapes and those sorts of things that need to be fire retardant. And so we had quite an extensive report really to look at, and it's standard operating procedure. Like for instance, you may have a desk that's too close to an egress or something. They'd say you need to move your desk, or the door needs to open and you need to have this much room, 3 feet, 5 feet, whatever it is. They have a whole checklist they go through. So I know Mr. Mackey, our new facilities director, was a big part of that with our principals, and so they're taking a look at that. I think I'm hoping that at one of our December meetings he can come in and talk about the list and kind of where we were, where we are, and where we're going. I think most of the list will be addressed. There might be a few things. The first question people started to ask are these budget issues, and I think in talking to Jeff, these are small items that I think we can take care of. Replacing some certain things. We want to, many of our rooms, our teachers really warm up our rooms, for lack of a better way, and if there were things that we had to take out of our rooms, we want to get them back in our rooms, right? But we want to make sure they're the right materials and that sort of thing. So, Mr. Mackey's working on that. He's doing a great job, and I know he's working directly with the principals, Mr. Flynn and Mr. Dowd. We had an HSLT meeting today, and Mr. Mackey was at, and we had an opportunity to have a great discussion about communication, working with our teachers, working with our principals, working with Mr. Flynn and Mr. Dowd. So I think you'll see, as part of that presentation in December, you'll feel pretty good about it. Mr. Sweeney asked, the other thing was I'm working on Dr. Powers, so I want to try to get him here as soon as I can. I would have brought him tonight. He wouldn't come. We'll try the next time. We'll get him here shortly. And we're still working on some sort of follow-up on that behavior management piece. So, at some point, that'll be an agenda item at some point to talk about, how we manage behaviors in our classrooms, and, what's the Hampstead model philosophically, and making sure that we're consistent and we're sending a really, really strong message in terms of supporting, both the students and staff and the administration, and obviously everybody that works there. So that's my report, unless you had some questions. No? You good?
Do you have any questions?
Good. Thank you. I do have, I know this is kind of a surprise, because I do have something that I'd like to address in non-public at some point that I think is sensitive in nature, and I think it would fall under reputation, I think, so I think C, at the end, if we could just a quick 10-minute non-public so I can update the board on a matter.
Sure, I think that's fine. I don't think we have anything else for non-public, so it should be short. With that said, I have a motion to go into non-public under 91A:3, paragraph 2C, reputation.
Second.
Melissa, will you poll the board, please?
Yes, Mr. Giard?
Yes.
Mrs. Parnell?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
And Mrs. Yusenka?
Yes.
Thank you.
I would also like to request that that Principal Denola stay, if that's okay.
Yes, that's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Emma. Good night.
Cable, we're not going to be making any decisions, so we are not going to be coming back out.